Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking an incredible, honestly almost unbelievable story about how an entire nation deliberately and strategically fast-tracked its future. But, to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of China's academic and tech leap, we actually need to start far away from any major university campus. We need to start in a farmer's field.
From Pakistan to China.
To understand this massive global shift bridging local agriculture with international superpower ambitions, we're going to look at Waqas Ahmed. He's an agricultural engineer over in Faisalabad, Pakistan. Now, Waqas doesn't just walk his fields to check on his crops like farmers used to do. He manages literally every inch of his land using a smart app called Kisan 360. This app pulls in satellite and drone data to tell him exactly where he needs water or fertilizer. It even has an AI voice assistant that talks to him in Urdu. For Waqas, this tech is an absolute game changer, saving him a ton of money on water, fuel, and extra labor. But here's where it gets really interesting. The real story isn't just the app itself.
The real question is, who actually built it? You might be thinking Silicon Valley, right? Well, no. It was developed by the China-Pakistan Joint Laboratory for Artificial Intelligence and Smart Agriculture. That's a direct collaboration between Faisalabad Agricultural University and the Guangzhou University Software Engineering Institute. This perfectly illustrates how Chinese academic influence isn't just staying within its own borders anymore. It is quietly but deeply embedding itself into everyday life across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa.
Moving on to part 2, the amazing Chinese university leap.
Let's look at the hard data, because this local farming app is really just a tiny symptom of a massive, globally orchestrated academic takeover. Over the last 30 years, Chinese higher ed has taken a leap like we've never seen before. Think about this. Back in 2010, if you looked at the elite QS top 50 university rankings, China was barely a blip. They had exactly one university on that entire list. Fast forward to the 2025-2026 rankings, and suddenly there are 5. Heavyweights like Tsinghua and Peking University have rocketed all the way up to the 12th and 13th spots globally. They're literally going toe-to-toe with the oldest, most prestigious Western institutions out there.
Let's zoom in on Tsinghua University for a second, because it's basically China's MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon all rolled into one. The innovations coming out of their labs right now are just mind-bending. They've developed the Excel AI chip to directly challenge giants like NVIDIA. They built DrugClip, which is an AI engine that rapidly speeds up drug discovery. And maybe the craziest part, they created Absolute Zero. It's a self-learning AI reasoning model that doesn't even need human data to learn.
And the sheer volume of what they're producing is off the charts. Researchers at Tsinghua actually outpace Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and MIT combined when it comes to securing patents. This intense institutional drive has pushed China to the point where they now own more than half of all artificial intelligence and machine learning patents on Earth. Think about that, more than the entire rest of the world combined.
Section 3. Deng and Xi, the Mind Strategy.
So you might be wondering, how did they pull this off? Because you don't just accidentally take over global AI patents overnight. Who engineered this master plan? Well, it was a multi-generational strategy. It started way back in the late 1970s when leader Deng Xiaoping realized China was seriously lagging behind the US and Japan in tech and industry. So he pushed for a huge focus on STEM and sent waves of students abroad to soak up Western engineering. Fast forward to today, and President Xi Jinping, who, fun fact, is a Tsinghua chemical engineering grad himself, took that foundation and commanded a full-scale push for total global dominance.
The bedrock of this whole generational shift was bringing back the Gaokao exam. The government realized their old system, which was purely about rote memorization, was really hurting critical and analytical thinking. By reinstating this brutally rigorous national exam, they strictly rewarded intellectual merit. It fundamentally reset how Chinese youth approached learning. It basically lit a massive fire for higher education across the entire country.
All right, part 4, $1 trillion for research.
Look, vision is great, but vision without funding is just a dream. You can have the smartest students in the world, but if they don't have world-class labs, you're not going to get world-class results. Between 2021 and the end of 2024 alone, the Chinese government poured an earth-shattering $539 billion into higher education. What really sets China apart here is the consistency. While Western governments often fund projects in short, politically driven 5-year bursts, China has been relentlessly compounding its educational investments year after year for 3 decades. And that relentless funding yields undeniable results. In 2025, 14% of all elite research accepted into the highly prestigious Science magazine came from China, making them second only to the United States. But here's the kicker. This isn't just stuffy academic theory. This research is directly fueling massive industrial leaps for their battery and EV companies like CATL and BYD. They are taking lab success and turning it straight into global market dominance.
And the spending? It just keeps climbing. By 2024, China's total research and development spending across universities and corporations crossed the staggering $1 trillion mark. Let that sink in. $1 trillion. For the first time in modern history, they caught up to, and by some measures even exceeded, the undisputed king of R&D, the United States.
But what makes those numbers even more fascinating is the concept of purchasing power. The OECD reported that in 2026, China will spend about $300,000 per researcher compared to Europe's $270,000. Now, that might not sound like a huge gap, but because lab equipment, construction, and specialized labor cost significantly less in China, that money stretches incredibly far. They are yielding way more tangible value out of every single dollar than Western budgets can manage.
Let's get into Part 5, the Battle of Minds, US versus China.
This massive financial commitment has kicked off a really fierce, high-stakes battle for global talent. It's not just about who has the best tech anymore, it's about who can attract the brilliant minds to build that tech. For decades, Western universities had a total monopoly on foreign talent. The brightest minds from around the world all went to the US or Europe. Well, not anymore. China is actively poaching the absolute elite. They brought in Coucher Burkar, a Fields Medal-winning mathematician, to lead a specialized lab at Tsinghua. They recruited French Nobel laureate Gerard Mourou to establish a new laser and nuclear physics institute at Peking University. It's a massive engineered brain gain.
Now take those imported Nobel-level genius minds and add them to a homegrown army of over 5 million new STEM graduates produced every single year. 5 million every year. When you put that together, you have an unstoppable research machine. The sheer volume of human capital being directed at the future is completely unprecedented.
Now, if we step back and strictly look at the objective facts, both systems have their own strengths and vulnerabilities. The Chinese system's massive funding is hampered by a notably high rate of academic publication fraud, which affects the quality of that massive volume. On the other hand, the US still offers a premier elite academic experience overall, but it is currently suffering from severe federal budget cuts to research institutions under the Trump administration. That introduces a serious level of political volatility into long-term scientific funding.
And we're seeing the real-world consequences of those shifting political winds. Look at this. A March 2025 poll published by Nature magazine found that a staggering 75% of surveyed scientists working in the US said they actually want to leave and relocate to another country. When you contrast that kind of uncertainty with China's deeply stable, multi-decade financial commitment to its scientists, you can clearly see the tides shifting in this global battle of minds.
Finally, Part 6. What about our Arab universities? Where do we stand?
So, seeing the sheer scale of investment, the strategic planning, and the raw human capital required to compete in the modern world, we really have to turn the mirror back on our own region. If this is what it takes to build the future, where do we stand? Why aren't our regional universities on these elite top 50 lists? Are our governments and institutions truly investing enough in research, development, and the retention of elite talent? The trillion-dollar battle for the future of technology isn't something coming tomorrow. It's happening right now. So what will it take for us to enter the arena? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to think on that.